So wait, are you a satyr too?
Do I look like a debaucherous, wine-swilling goat boy? I'm without it.
Sela's a highly revered Egyptian fertility goddess. Practically royalty. Think Meghan Markle.
Sorry. Wow, what an honor. You're, goddess.
Snowpiercer is a 2014 film by Bong Joon-ho about a perpetually running train that circles a frozen globe after a substance designed to combat the apocalyptic effects of global warming inadvertently backfires and causes a different apocalyptic scenario to transpire. The train itself is stratified along class lines, with the wealthy living luxuriously at the front of the train, while the back of the train is a tenement packed full of the filthy and desperate and poor. Curtis, the main character played by Chris Evans, leads a revolution that sweeps through the train from front to back until they reach the engine, the heart of the train at the very head. The movie is incredibly sympathetic to the oppressed. In it, they stir themselves to action in the hopes of securing a better future for themselves. The violence against their oppressors is framed as cathartic, but the ultimate goal and how the film comments on it is what makes Snowpiercer so good and so interesting. We're told that the reason that previous attempts to revolt have failed is because they never took the engine. When Curtis finally reaches the engine near the end of the movie, we, the audience, learn that the revolution was engineered as a means of population control, and Curtis is invited to become a new elite who can live out the remainder of his days in luxury at the front of the train. Previous revolutions did not fail, though, because they failed to take the engine. We learn that previous revolutions failed because the goal was to take the engine and to only supplant the current ruling class to become the new ruling class. They didn't want to change the system, they just wanted to change who's in charge of a system that oppressed them, and that was always going to be a losing game. So ultimately, the solution isn't to take the engine for themselves, it's to reject the entire train and to do something new and possibly scary, but which could ultimately be more equitable for everyone. I didn't really have a reason to bring up Snowpiercer. That was more or less a non sequitur. Now we're just going to forget about all of that, and it won't come up again in this video. So I watched the first season of Charmed recently, and it's a reboot of the 1998 series about a group of sisters who discover they're witches. It was just a cheesy Monster of the Week show, but I did get a lot of joy out of watching it with my mom and sister when I was younger. I never got too heavily invested into it though, so aside from a little tinge of nostalgia, I don't really have too much skin in the game. I didn't go into this with the knives sharpened, ready to tear it apart for not being what I already liked or wanted it to be. I just wanted a fun, goofy Monster of the Week show, and to be completely honest, I got that. It was a fun watch. Plus, with this being a reboot, they recast all of the roles, and the show is now led by 3 women of color, and one of the sisters is openly queer, and that's awesome. Those are some really positive changes, and I'm really happy that they went ahead and made them. The other thing is, this show really wears its feminism on its sleeve. It's really in your face about how woke it is, and that desire to project wokeness stilts the dialogue at times, a lot actually. Especially in the early episodes.
Being a witch is a fully pro-choice enterprise. Or later.
One, they should have never hired a cis male to lead the women's studies department.
Although this cis male has been published 12 times by respected feminist journals and retweeted by Roxanne Gay.
Papa is woke.
Yeah, I decided that not all domestic tasks are oppressive.
So, you're not the first to fall for an imposter demon. Let's just say I'm pretty sure that's how Brexit happened.
She could be the vessel.
Please do not take credit for my ideas, white man. He is threatened by the idea of a powerful woman.
Now, just wait a second. That last part is fake news.
What about Cam? Oh, he was obviously an incel. Involuntary celibate.
Virginity is really just a tool of the patriarchy to control our sexuality.
I will spread pestilence, death, and disaster, and the source will rise.
Is it weird I don't even find it disturbing when Harvey speaks anymore? This whole scenario has been normalized. I blame the president.
Late night bubble baths are my safe space.
But again, the show being more socially aware and attempting to strike progressive themes is certainly not a bad thing, even if the execution is a little bit clumsy and leads to this feeling of, how do you do, fellow intersectional feminists? It does raise the question, though, about how much of this wokeness is performative, and what does the show actually have to say about power and oppression, which I think are valid questions given that the show itself wears its thesis statement so heavily on its sleeve, and because power dynamics are important to the show. So what does it actually say about power and who gets to wield power? Well, that's where it gets a little whack. And to examine why, we're going to look at the major players, which are the Charmed Ones, the three sisters, along with the Elders, the Sarcana, and the Demons. We'll look at them and what they want, how they try to get it, and how the show ends. The first season of Charmed opens on a murder of crows, and then a murderer. The woman killed is Marisol Vera, a witch and the mother of Maggie and Mel, two of the three main characters, along with Macy, the estranged sister, who was given up for adoption and shows up at Maggie and Mel's door 3 months after the death of their mother. Unbeknownst to them, they're all witches like their mom, and their powers first manifest shortly after Macy meets the other two. In a scene with on-again, off-again boyfriend Galvin, Macy gets flustered and accidentally telekinetically flings a beer bottle. Maggie starts hearing people's thoughts when she shakes their hands, and Mel freezes time by accident before someone can spill coffee on her on-again, off-again girlfriend, Nico, who also happens to be a cop. And you might hear that and think, oh, so since this show is about power dynamics and it stars 3 women of color, are they going to comment upon that in any way? And this is the only time that really comes up.
Come on, you saw how jumpy she was.
Yeah, she gets nervous around cops, as plenty of people of color do.
So anyway, the 3 of them get kidnapped and tied to a chair in their attic by Harry, the women's studies professor at the local college. He tells them that they're witches and that they have to save the world from an impending doom.
With the blossoming of death comes the awakening of the source of all evil. And then we fall.
Harry is a white lighter. His function in the show is basically to be a young hot Giles from Buffy. He's an attendant to the Elders and an advisor to witches. Put a pin in the Elders for now, because we'll be back to them pretty soon. Just know that they're like the ruling body of magical creatures, and that they're being killed off. So in order to stop the Harbinger of Hell from raising the source of all evil and bringing about the apocalypse, the Charmed Ones have to harness this latent magic, this very potent ability that they have together called the Power of 3. Initially, they aren't sure if they want to take on the burden of doing all of this until Professor Me Too at the college turns into the Night King and makes them believe that he killed their mother. But oops, it sets the prophecy into motion. Episode 3 begins with them accidentally summoning Harry and deciding that they have to start referring to him with a nickname to avoid repeating that mistake.
Why not Meghan Markle?
We're not naming our white lighter Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle. I'm going to figure out if I can trust Meghan Markle.
Have you ever met Meghan Markle?
I guess we can trust Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle!
But by far the weirdest instance of monarchs coming up in the show is this scene from episode 7, where they meet a literal goddess, a fertility goddess.
Seen as a highly revered Egyptian fertility goddess. Practically royalty. Think Meghan Markle.
Sorry.
Wow, what an honor.
So anyway, there's a big push in episode 3 for the Charmed Ones to just do as they're told and let the Elders take their time and handle things. In that same episode, Maggie meets the chivalrous Parker and falls for him. Put a pin in Parker. We also learn that Harry used to guide a witch named Fiona who was institutionalized and maybe possibly killed herself as a result. Put a pin in that too. Our first proper on-screen appearance from one of the Elders in present day is Charity Callahan, who enters the scene in episode 4.
In reality, I run an investment fund that uses microloans to help women in developing nations start their own businesses. We are tackling poverty and inequality through ethical, female-focused capitalism. I understand, but our main goal isn't to maximize profits. It's to build communities of women supporting women.
She shows up to tell them that they have to perform a ritual killing. They have to kill the Harbinger with daggers. And they're all conflicted because the the Harbinger is possessing Angela Wu, their friend and student of their mom, who is an alumni of the college. Their mom supported Angela Wu when she, along with a few other women at the college, accused Professor Night King of being a sexual predator. Charity is very, very insistent that they have to kill her, and that there is no other way around this. And they really go out of their way to frame Charity's confidence that killing Angela is the only way as her just being overconfident but well-meaning. And we'll revisit this, but she does have a point, since there isn't a spell in existence strong enough, at the time, to exorcise a demon as powerful as the Harbinger. But the ghost of their mother just writes a brand new spell for them that is powerful enough to exorcise the demon. They seal the Harbinger away in a paint bucket, which ends up in the hands of Alistair, the first major demon and the first real antagonist of the show. But again, we'll get back to the demons. Episode 7 goes on to introduce Jada and the Sisters of Arcana, or the Sarcana. She shoots lightning and she teleports, just like Harry, because she's half white lighter. So by this point, all of the pieces are on the board, and the rest of the season spends time moving them around while throwing in interstitial Monster of the Week plots about Medusa and possessed pan flutes and monster bugs, while the sisters unravel mysteries and try to stop the apocalypse, all while fighting demons and finding out about the Sarcana and the Elders. And speaking of which, hey, what's up? No kings, no love for your made up things. So the Elders as a group are kind of awful. To recap, the Elders are the governing body for witches and other magical beings. Throughout the season, we only really meet 3 of them. 3 of them who are of any importance anyway, though others are seen and some of them do have small speaking roles. So there's Charity, Elder Bari, and their mom. That's right, their mom was an elder too. Out of them, Charity is the main on-screen presence, but their decisions and their decrees as a group are talked about, referenced, and felt all throughout the season. They are incredibly powerful, secretive, and controlling. They don't tolerate other witches disobeying their orders either. Like after they exorcise Angela Wu, the Elders confiscate the spellbook to search it for any more unsanctioned magic. Before that, when they're all scrambling to find an alternative to killing Angela, Mel objects to Charity and her plan, and Charity literally steals her voice. She silences her through magic. They punish Harry for an illicit relationship by taking his powers away, which threatens to kill him. And then there's all the stuff about necromancy, and oh, we have to talk about the necromancer episode. So necromancers are a despised class of witch said to call upon dark magic to raise the dead. Everybody distrusts and hates them, including the Elders, who are basically the witch government. There's a place where necromancers get sentenced to, along with all of the other evil magic criminals and demons and whatnot, and that place is Tartarus. This is a place where scorpions sting you, and their sting induces a recurring loop of the most painful and traumatic memories as vivid hallucinations that you live out Groundhog's Day style forever. Again, prisoners are tortured in these boiling rock prisons forever. It's the bad place. Well, midway through the season, we learn that Macy died as a baby, and Marisol went behind the other Elders' backs to find a necromancer who would resurrect her. Marisol breaks that necromancer out of Tartarus to do it. She was already in prison once, and Macy, in this episode, summons the necromancer Nancy with a K to confront her about what happened and why she has this darkness inside of her. Harry strongly advises against this, warning Macy that necromancers are inherently untrustworthy, and Maggie recoils at the sight of one, and she's supposed to be the one with a big heart, the empathetic one. She is literally an empath. So there's a witch hunting Nancy with a K. She's holding this 20-year vendetta against her. According to Nancy the Necromancer, it's just due to prejudice, and that witch is even the one who got her sent to Tartarus in the first place for no other reason than prejudice and spite for not bringing her demon boyfriend back from the dead.
And they just took her word for it?
The Elders despise necromancers. They malign us and spread lies about us and tell people to shun us.
And when those in power repeat lies long enough, people start to believe them. Just turn on the news.
She gives this really impassioned speech about it, and she talks about how half of Tartarus shouldn't even be incarcerated there. So you can already kind of see where this metaphor is going. And the thing about her speech is, it rings not only sincere, but more importantly, true and honest. Not even necessarily to herself as a character, but to the circumstances that this whole thing is a metaphor for. At this point in the episode, we're meant to think, oh man, she's actually being sincere and heartfelt here. Maybe necromancers are not the force for evil they've been made out to be, and the elders are once again wrong. Oh, I wish it was that. Because, oops, she's lying, and the elders and everyone showing disdain for necromancers throughout the episode are totally proven right. Nancy the necromancer was just lying to manipulate Macy into killing the witch who was hunting her down. And the witch who was hunting her down was doing it for very good reasons, because it turns out Nancy with a K actually made a deal with a demon to turn other people that she resurrected into demons themselves in exchange for eternal youth. She goes full Palpatine at one point.
Maggie! Kill the witch. You know what to do.
How about I keep pinching your left circumflex coronary artery, shutting off the blood flow to your heart, and you die. And the spell is broken.
Tap into your darkness and destroy her. No! Finish the job.
Good, Annie, good. Kill him. Do it.
Are we clear why this sucks so much? The thesis of this episode is maybe mass incarcerations of largely hated groups inside of brutal industrialized prisons are justified. Because hey, they're just dirty necromancers using their dark magic. I cannot with this episode. So, as you can see, there's already some dissonance between the on-paper actions of the elders and how they are treated within the show. That's not to say that they are portrayed as being in the right 100% of the time. We've already seen an instance in which they were not. But as a group, most of what they do seems pretty terrible when you think about it for just a second. But the show softens them and sympathizes with them and rationalizes away a lot of their awfulness. And we should look at Charity, since she's the major on-screen representation for the elders for much of this season, because she's a good microcosm of that. Like, for instance, she takes Mel's voice away and pushes them to murder Angela, but also you can see from her perspective that it's one death to prevent the literal apocalypse, and the rest of the elders concluded it was the only way. So it's not that she's bloodthirsty or conniving or anything, it's just she's trying to do the right thing, and that's how the show frames it. The show goes out of its way to not judge her too harshly at this point, and they just frame it as her being overconfident. And to be honest, even when they propose exorcising the demon from Angela, she's kind of right to insist that they still have to kill her anyway, because no such exorcism spell powerful enough to do that exists. And that's true, until they're like, hey, Ghost Alexa, can you write me a Harbinger of Hell exorcism spell? She is given the shades of gray, leaning towards justifiable treatment, and this happens throughout the season. In fact, throughout the season, she softened even more, and is even pretty supportive of the Charmed Ones and played as sympathetic, even as we learn all of this stuff about the elders, like the whole necromancy thing. Plus, she is the ethical, female-focused capitalism lady giving microloans to women in developing nations and absolutely not seeking to maximize profits. Her name is literally Charity. But aha, it's all misdirection, and the twist is that Charity killed Elder Bari, who was helping Macy access some of her demon powers she got from being resurrected by Nancy. And she kills Elder Bari because Elder Bari found out her secret, that Charity is actually the one who killed Marisol, along with a couple of other elders who found out about the whole thing. There we go. We got her. She was bad all along. Well, kinda. She again gets to justify and rationalize all of her actions, and gets a lot of sympathy and even then gets to just be, at worst, the rotten apple of the elders rather than implicating all of them. She ends up sort of a secondary antagonist, but through tragic circumstance. And the reason that she does it in the first place is because she believes what everybody else already believes, which is that the Sarcana are dangerous terrorists, and that Marisol is getting too close to them, and that the Sarcana corrupted her sister.
My first baby died.
I don't understand.
I brought her back. With necromancy.
Necromancy is the darkest of dark magic. A witch brought back from the dead through blood magic.
But she's not just any witch. She's a charmed one.
You can't possibly think.
I have 3, and the gift of prophecy. I know that it's them.
A charmed one. Touched by evil, it cannot be.
The charmed ones are needed now.
But a charmed one compromised by blood magic. Marisol, nothing could be more dangerous.
Solvite en la potentia 3. Excita en la potentia 3.
Stop, please. You know I can't let you finish this.
En la potentia 3. Socia en la potentia 3.
I'm begging you. Marisol, you're my friend.
Absolve en la potentia 3.
I'm begging you. Don't make me do this, please.
I forgive you. Absolve en la potentia 3. Absolve en la potentia 3.
So she gets plenty of sympathetic motivation even in murdering Marisol, another elder. I cannot emphasize enough that the elders are not villains, even though everything on paper reads like they should be.
I never cared about your bucks, so if I run up with a mask on, probably got a gas can too, and I'm not here to fill her up. Nope, we came to riot.
A lot of the season is spent with the elders trying to keep the charmed ones under their thumb. The Sarcana are presented as anathema to that. So the elders are functionally authoritarians, and the Sarcana are straight up witch anarchists that the elders are trying to wipe out because they are seen as dangerous terrorists, language that Harry even uses. They are radicals whose mission statement is that the elders represent an unjust hierarchy and the power structure should be flattened to be more equitable for all witches. And you know, our interactions with the elders kind of demonstrate why the Sarcana think that way. It's not until a decent ways through the season that we finally get a bit more of the Sarcana's perspective when Mel is tasked with joining them as a mole. There she falls for Jada and also grows to sympathize with their cause. Apparently the Sarcana started as a group of witches founded by an elder, and they plied their witchcraft to help mortals as well as non-mortals alike. They simply exercised their powers to help as many people as possible, but the elders, who were more conservative, deemed that an abuse of their power and forbade it. The Sarcana didn't take too well for that, and there was a schism. As tensions boiled over, there was an insurrection and a lot of witches died, including what was thought to be all active members of the Sarcana until they resurface in the present day of the show. So now the Sarcana are back, they're rebuilding their forces. Marisol was apparently an ally, which we learned from a flashback with Charity, and they want to reignite their war on the elders, and they're going to go into battle led by Fiona, the witch that Harry previously guided, and the sister of Charity, whom Charity thought the Sarcana had corrupted and possibly drove to suicide. Fiona, as it turns out, wasn't institutionalized and obviously wasn't driven to suicide. She was, however, imprisoned by the elders in Tartarus. So there's another strike for them, right? Well, not quite. This show has a real habit of proving the elders right, because the most important thing about Fiona is that she is the keeper of the sacred flame, which is said to be the flame of all magic, the source of all magic. And also, hey, it also happens to be that source of all evil that the demons keep talking about and that Harry's prophecy keeps mentioning. The source of magic and the source of all evil are the same thing. Demons and witches derive their power from the same source, and Fiona is its steward. After being imprisoned for being friendly with the Sarcana break her out and nurse her back to health. And in return, she eventually comes to slaughter all of them and brings the demons the source of all evil. So at best, the Sarcana are well-meaning rebels with a point, but are ultimately naive and led by someone who's just lying to manipulate them in the pursuit of their own goals. Aw, god damn it, it's just Korra again!
Men of power telling lies with shifty hands and thirsty eyes, and they can smell your fear like blood.
The demons are basically just fascists. It's really not that deep. They're evil, they move the conflict along, they want to release the Harbinger of Hell so it can bring death and pestilence and raise the source of all evil, and bring about the end of all mortal life on Earth. So, more or less evil for evil's sake. While the Sarcana and Elders are each pulling the Charmed One's allegiances and presenting shades of grey, the demons led by Alistair are just outright the antagonists of the season. And out of all of the demons, the ones in Alistair's orbit are the important ones. So first, there's Hunter, who is one of Alistair's sons. He's a shapeshifter, and just all around, not a good dude. We'll sort of get back to him for a second later. Then there's Hunter's half-brother, Parker. He is a shadow boy, but he wants to be a real boy, and not a demon. But wouldn't you know it, there's a whole bunch of misunderstandings when Maggie finds out that he's actually Alistair's half-demon son. Parker wants to not be a demon. Alistair wants to keep him a demon. In fact, he wants to use him as a vessel for the source of all evil. And finally, there is Julia Wagner, who is not a demon, but she is the ex-wife of a demon. She is Alistair's ex, and the human mother of Parker. Early in the season, she takes over the genetics lab that Macy works at, and there's a lot of trying to rehabilitate the image of capitalism in here, where she assures Macy that just because some big pharmaceutical company took over the lab, it doesn't mean that they're going to stop doing groundbreaking research. But she has a budget crunch, so she needs Macy to fire on-again, off-again boyfriend Galvin, who also works at the lab with her. Macy protests that, and Julia is just like, come on, men have conversations like this all the time, and then they go play golf together. And it just makes you think, here we go, she's gonna be a secondary or tertiary antagonist. But nope, she's actually totally reasonable and cool about all of it, and Macy is even like, well, actually, I'll just find you other ways to deal with the budget crunch, so nobody has to get laid off. And Julia goes with it, which is totally the way things always work out under capitalism. All of Julia's work at the lab afterwards is pretty much just in service of her trying to find a cure for Parker's bad case of is a bit of a literal demon. They're gonna find a cure for his hereditary demonhood. Since the demons are just straight up evil and opposing the Charmed Ones rather than trying to gain their allegiance, the real ideological conflict of the show is between whose side the Charmed Ones will take between the Elders and Sarcana. And wouldn't you know it, both the controlling and conservative Elders and the anarchist Sarcana have some good points, but they're just tainted by some bad apples. So the truth must obviously lie somewhere in the middle. Sort of. Oh, we're getting there. The Harbinger gets loose, and it's basically a walking pandemic. The source is raised, the demons have their vessel, but wait, Macy is also eligible to take on the incredible power of the source because of her partial demon blood, so she just does that, and kills Alistair, and there's a little bit of a conflict in the next episode as it corrupts her and makes her paranoid, but the power of sisterhood prevails, they overcome it, the end. Almost. So in order to actualize the prophecy, the demons had to kill all of the Elders, and Charity had taken care of a fair chunk of that herself, but then the rest of them were killed off by Hunter. So the Elders are wiped out, and Fiona massacred the Sarcana. That leaves a power vacuum in the magical world, and the ideological tug-of-war moot. So after a season of getting to see the Sarcana's point of view and maybe possibly sympathizing with their struggle and their desire to use their power for good and create a more equitable society for other witches, and a whole season of seeing some of the gross ways in which the Elders abused their power, the Charmed Ones are left as uniquely important and powerful witches with the opportunity to do basically whatever they want. So what do? They just become the new Elders, or the new rulers, or whatever. It's at this point that the show's reverence for royalty, like
Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle.
Meghan Markle!
Think Meghan Markle.
makes a lot more sense. So to recap, they are the descendants of a member of the previous monarchistic power structure. They inherit their great powers from their mom and are now themselves monarchs. And this is treated as a happy ending. So I still don't hate this season. All of the things I said in the beginning remain true, and I think that there are some good Monster of the Week plots in here and some emotionally impactful stuff with the sisters. But the themes here really give me pause. Maybe season 2 will build upon this in an interesting and introspective way, but whether intentionally or not, season 1 of Charmed is content with just taking the engine. Well, that does it for this, my first video essay of 2020. I'm hoping to get some more video essays out a little bit more frequently, but in the meantime, I would appreciate it if you would hit the thumbs up on the video, leave a comment. I read them all. Sub to the channel if you're not already subscribed. I do largely informative video game videos, but also occasionally things like this too. And please share the video around. I appreciate all of it. Oh, also I stream Mondays now on twitch.tv/scribed. And also this video has so much B-roll and other stuff in it that's almost certainly going to get flagged and demonetized. So especially for things like this to exist, I would appreciate it if you would support me over on Patreon at patreon.com/scribe. If you can't, don't feel bad. I totally understand. That is going to do it for now. Thank you all for watching. Take it easy. Have a good one, y'all.